So, hey everyone, welcome to this brand new series of Spring Boot series for beginners. My name is Rakesh and I'm a computer science student currently learning Spring Boot myself. Through this series, I want to share everything I learn in a beginner friendly, structured, and hands on way. So, if you're new to backend development or Java frameworks, this series is designed for absolute beginners. I will break down each concept step by step and also try to keep things simple but practical. So in this series, we will try to cover all the beginner concepts of Spring Boot, like what is Spring Framework, what is Spring Boot, what are the difference between Spring Framework and Spring Boot, and how they work together to build real-world application. What are the jargons in the Spring Boot field, like inversion of control, dependency injection, beans, XML, configuration, annotations, all these things we will cover step by step. So I will also will be building real REST APIs and full stack ready backend application. And we will also see how to set up the Spring Boot project in different IDEs like IntelliJ IDEA or VS Code. So I will try to upload a few videos every week, balancing along my studies and this YouTube journey of mine. So you can expect like one or two videos per week, but I will definitely try to complete this series before I stop uploading. So if you're looking for a beginner-friendly Spring Boot roadmap from someone walking the same path, hit that subscribe button and let's grow together as a developers. So in the last video, we have seen how tight coupling and loose coupling works in programming and what are the disadvantages of tight coupling and how we are able to avoid tight coupling and implement loose coupling using the concept of interface and abstraction. So in this video, we will see how Spring Framework is helping us to avoid tight coupling and promote loose coupling. So you will see many jargons related to Spring Framework in this video like bean, container, Spring Framework, Spring Container, different classes that you might not have seen as of now. But don't worry, this is just the beginning. And in this video, your goal is to learn how Spring Boot is helping us to avoid tight coupling. So don't focus on anything else. That will be taught in the future video in detailed manner. So without wasting any time, let's start the video. So I have moved into the IntelliJ IDE. Now let's create a new project. Click on this file, then click on new, then click on this project, then give the name of the project something like intro to Spring. Then in the build system, make sure you have chosen Maven over here because we will be needing this Maven build tool. So make sure you have clicked on that and then click the JDK version according to that is present on your device, then create the project. So when we create the project, it will ask us to open in this window or a new window. You can choose according to your convenience. So now we have this form.xml over here. So we need some brief information about this form.xml. So if you have worked on any servlet JSP or any old Java projects using NetBeans and Core Java, you might know that when we were implementing the database concept, we needed the MySQL support. We were adding the jar file into the project library. But here, when we use Maven, we don't have to do that. We have to just add some dependency line code over here. So basically, we have to add some dependencies over here in this XML code. We will paste some dependency code and the project will automatically configure the required jar file or the required library file. So we will come back to this later. Now let's move into our package or project. And then here we have this main class. Now let me create a class called as message service. So let me create a class known as message service. So this message service will have a one method that will return some string value so the method name is get message. So it will return some string value like hello from message service. So it will return this string. So now if we want to call this method inside this main method, so what is our approach? So in normal Java, what we do? We have to create the object of message service class. So we create the object of message service class. And then using that object, we will simply call the method. So we will call the method using this particular object. Let me click and run. And you can see the output is being printed in the console. Hello from message service. So this is exactly what is tight coupling. We are creating the object of message service class inside the main class. So that means the main class and message service class are tightly coupled. So if we want to implement some new service feature, like let me see, let me add some email service over here. So if I add a email service and we want to use this email service instead of this message service, let me just copy paste this method inside email service and change the string line to hello from email service. So now let's move to the main file. Now, suppose we want to use email service and we don't want to use the message service anymore. So we have to change the code in the main file as well. So that is the demerit of tight coupling. So to accommodate one change, we have to change the entire code base. So here we declared the object of email service, and then using the email service, we will call the get message method. So this is everything about tight coupling and its demerit. So to avoid this tight coupling, Spring provide us with a feature or component known as bean. So what is a bean? So bean is simply an object in Java. So when we create an object using old system like this new keyword, then the user is supposed to manage the creation of object and how to use this in the code. So when we create the object using the new keyword, it is called as POJO object or plain old Java object. So this is a jargon related to Spring framework, where we call to the normal object that we use in the core Java, that is known as plain old Java object. So it is known as plain old Java object because here the user is managing the object by himself. We ourselves created this email service. We used this method by ourselves, and we are also responsible for dereferencing this object. So the entire life cycle of this object is managed by the user. So we don't want that. We want something else to manage the object for us. So that's where the Spring framework comes in. So Spring framework says that no worries, I will manage the object and I will take care of all the object lifecycle like creation, instantiation, dereferencing, and garbage collection. Everything I will manage. So you don't have to worry about it. So that is where the bean concept came from. So now let's move to pom.xml and add some Spring dependency over here. So because we are going to implement the Spring concepts, so we need some dependencies of Spring. So let's go to Google and search for this Spring Core Maven dependency. So search for it in the Google and then open this Maven repository website. Then go to this repository, choose for any stable version without any vulnerability. So let me choose 6.2.8 version. Go down here, you get a option to copy this. Make sure you are copying from the Maven for the Maven version because in the project we are using the Maven concept. So copy that and then paste it over here inside this dependency tag. So make sure you are copy and pasting it inside this dependency tag. So this dependency tag is used for containing all the dependencies. So we need another dependency, that is Spring Context Maven dependency. So search for Spring Context Maven dependency, then go to the files and then choose the same version that you have used for the Spring Core. I have used 6.2.8, so I will choose the same one for the Spring Context. So let me copy paste it over here. So once you copy paste it in the pom.xml, just click this small button over here, sync Maven changes. So it will sync all the changes and update your project file. Now your Spring dependency is added to the system. So now let me just comment all this and we will implement the concept using Spring Bean. So before that, we need a configuration file because before using the bean, we need to store it inside the Spring framework, or we have to let the Spring framework know that we are using the bean concept. So we are not going to manage the bean anymore. You have to manage it by yourself. So the Spring framework must be notified by the user. So how can we notify that? By using configuration file. So here, let's move over here, then search for Spring Bean configuration XML file. So you will get the first link for springdocs.io. Then move down over here, just copy this equivalent file and paste it inside the configuration.xml file. So here you have something like called bean definitions here. So here you have to define the bean that you are going to ask the Spring framework to manage for us. So here we have to declare and define the bean. So how can we define and declare the bean? So we have to use a bean tag. So inside the bean tag, we will use something like ID. So in the plain old Java object, we were using reference, as you know. Here, service is a reference by which we are calling the object of email service. So basically, the email service object is assigned to this variable called as reference. Sorry, called as service. So this reference variable service is responsible for storing this particular email service object. So whenever we need the service of email service object, we will use this service. So it has a name basically service by which we are calling it within the method or any other place. So in the bean also it has something called ID. So you have to give some ID to it so that you can refer to it in the class, in the required class. So in the there is another attribute that is known as class where you need to specify which class the bean belong to. Here we have one class over here that is message service. So let me implement the bean for message service first of all. So let me give the ID as message bean and let me give the fully classified class name. So here you have to give the fully classified class name including the package as well. So we specified that Spring Framework is going to manage this message bean for us. We don't have to create the object. We don't have to instantiate it anymore. The Spring Framework will manage it for us. Now let's move to main and then use a class called ApplicationContext. So I think there is some error. So it has not synced. So we are not getting the suggestion for application context. So just let me write it. Application is context is equal to new class path application context. So here we have to provide the configuration file that we have been using. So basically you are directing the Spring Framework that in this particular file, I have declared the beans. So go over here and add this configuration bean to your container and manage this particular object or bean for us. So for now, forget what is application context, class path, XML application context. We will be discussing them in details in future videos. But as of now, just understand that what is the role of this line? That it directs the Spring Framework to configuration.xml file to manage the beans that are declared in that particular file. So basically, it tells that go to configuration XML file and manage this message bean for us. Create the object by yourself and then give us where we require it. So we have declared the bean over here. So here we have declared the bean definition. So here we have declared the bean definition here. So now in this line, we are letting the Spring Framework know that bean is declared in configuration file. Now we are going to extract the bean. So how can we extract the bean? So for that, we have a method that is context.getBean. So in the getBean method, you have to use the ID that you have used for that particular bean, that is message bean. So using this ID, you have to call the bean that you are trying to extract. So you have to use the message bean over here. So this bean is nothing but the object of this message service class. So we have to assign this inside a reference variable of message service. So also we have to typecast it using the message service class because it returns the bean in any other format. So we have to typecast it. Now, if we call the method using the reference, this reference basically contains the bean that is created and managed by Spring Framework. So if we print this particular method, we will get the required output, message service dot get message. So if I run this line over here, we will get the same exact line printed over here, hello from message service. But this time we have not created any object inside the main method. We are not creating any object. So we are not using tight coupling. So the object creation, instantiation, everything about the object is managed by the Spring Framework. Here, let me write use the bean to call the method. So the advantage of this is that we are not declaring the object of any other class inside this main class. We are just extracting it from the Spring Framework because the Spring Framework is now managing the object for us. So we are extracting it from the Spring Framework and using it in our use case scenario. So here we have to use the bean. So we just extracted it in the previous line, then used it over here. Now let me use the email service over here. So if I want to change this main, the purpose of this main application to implement the email service instead of this message service. So what we have to do is that we have to change this bean over here. So you have to change this bean to email bean and then change the class as well to email service. So that instead of pointing to to message service bean, our configuration file will now tell the Spring framework that you have to manage the email service bean rather than the message service bean. So now if I move to the main method, so here we have to use the name that is email bean, and then store it inside some reference of email service because email service is a different class than message service. So from here, you can call the get message of email service. So what is the advantage of all this? So the advantage of all this is that we don't have to declare the object of email service or message service inside the main method. We can just declare the bean, then extract the bean from the container, from the Spring container, and then use the bean or object to call the method. So I hope you understand what I was trying to explain in this video. So the goal, so if I have to revise the concepts that we have learned in this video, so just let me give you a quick summary or recap. So the main goal of this video was to demonstrate how Spring Framework is able to perform loose coupling or avoid tight coupling. So first of all, we took a normal Java class and then created a method of it and then called the method inside the main class using the normal concept. Like we created an object and then using that object, we called the method. Then we know that that is the tight coupling concept because we are declaring the object of another class inside this main class. So we want to avoid that because in that way our code is being tightly coupled. So the two classes are being tightly coupled. So to avoid that, we use something known as bean. So what is a bean? Bean is same as the object in Java, but the object is managed by the user or developer, but the bean is entirely managed by the Spring framework. So instead of we managing it as a developer, the Spring framework is managing it for us. So that's why you don't see any object creation over here because the Spring framework is creating the object and managing it for us. So whenever we need that particular object, we are using this get bean method and then passing the name of the bean in the parameter to extract that particular bean. And then we use that bean or the object to call the method. And what is the need of his configuration file? So the configuration file, let us define or declare the beans that we are going to use. So you are letting the Spring framework know that this is the object of this particular class that I don't want to manage myself. So you will manage that for me. And what is the meaning of this line? So you are directing the Spring framework to the configuration file so that it will look into the configuration file and manage all the beans that are declared over here. So I hope you like this video. If you want me to keep uploading this kind of content related to Spring Boot, you can definitely hit the subscribe button and comment what you want me to create. So that's it for this video. We will meet in the next one. Thank you.